Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this wonderful Thursday morning. I hope you've started your morning well. We appreciate you taking some time this morning to join us here for this fire alarm basics presentations brought to you by Performance System Integration and Team. We know time is precious, and we appreciate you giving us a few minutes of that today. Wanted to introduce our presenters this morning. Leanne Bogers, who is our sales engineer, have been in the business for over 37 years, a guru in fire alarm systems, NICET certified, who will be walking us through the basics of the fire alarm systems this morning. And Bahram Roshan, I am the regional sales manager with Performance System Integration. I've been in this industry for over 7+ years, supporting our sales team, delivering the solutions needed for keeping all of our client spaces and people safe. I want to start off real quickly, kind of giving everyone a bit of a background on Performance System Integration. We are a single source service provider in the fire life safety business, been in this industry and this business for over almost 20 years. We are based out of the Pacific Northwest, out of Portland, Oregon, with offices throughout the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, Portland, and of recent, the last couple of years, have expanded into the Northern California region, where we are focused on two different offices or from two different offices supporting our clients in Northern California, an office in the San Jose area in the Bay Area, and one out of Rockland and Sacramento. Performance System Integration, as mentioned, is a single source provider of fire life safety. We focus on system installations, design, and follow that all the way through with the testing, inspections, and maintenance and repair, monitoring of the systems, and any deficiencies and repair work that may come from these inspections that we perform. All in all, we're heavily focused on compliance, and we are compliance experts to assure that our clients' spaces are safe and that all of the individuals working within those spaces are safe. So we are a full service, and certainly as we progress here, we certainly can answer any questions that may come up. So just some quick little housekeeping. We are recording this session, so we are going to be sending the link to all of our participants at the end of this program. And also, if you have any questions as this presentation continues, please go ahead and type those in the chat in Teams, and we will address those appropriately and accordingly as we move forward. So to our agenda this morning, NFPA 72, which is the National Fire Protection Code for fire alarm systems. We'll be talking a little bit about that this morning and the requirements within the NFPA 72 code books. We will be talking a little bit about the basics of the fire alarm system and how it operates. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit about some strategies to be proactive in avoiding some challenges and risks that come with the management of a fire alarm system. To start us off real quickly, the NFPA stands for National Fire Protection Association. A little bit of a history here. It started and was founded in 1896 by a group of fire safety professionals and industry leaders who, at that moment in time, recognized that there was a need for standardization and or standards on fire safety codes and practices. So today, NFPA 72 and additionally other NFPA codes for sprinkler and suppression, etc., are what we use in this industry to maintain those standards and assure that the safety codes are adhered to. To start us off here on just NFPA 72, NFPA 72 is specific to fire alarm systems. It gives all of us, as well as building owners, a guide on how fire alarm systems are designed, installed, and maintained. This scope certainly applies to all types of fire alarm systems within the code book, which is, again, a conventional system, an addressable and wireless systems, and many other systems that tie into a fire alarm system. And we can certainly address any questions regarding what a conventional system looks like, addressable, etc., as we move forward. The key components of the fire alarm system are, the best way we can describe this is think about an input, a throughput, and an output. The detection devices in a fire alarm system, meaning, for example, a smoke detector, a heat detector, these are all input to the fire alarm system. So these will alert and sort of alarm that there is an emergency going on in a facility, a building of some sort. So we call these detection devices as an input of the fire alarm system as a whole. And once the detection has occurred, the control equipment or the fire alarm control panel, which serves as the brains of the system, will recognize that signal coming in and will then proceed to output a message or a signal to a notification device or appliance. In this case, for example, a horn strobe. So what it will do is it will take the signal incoming, process it through the control equipment or the mother boards of the fire alarm panel, and then it actually notifies the occupants that there is a fire or a hazard to move forward with their evacuation plans to get people out of the premises safely. This essentially is the main component, and shortly Leanne will go into a bit of specifics to those components as we move forward. NFPA 72 calls out for some standards regarding the installation of a fire alarm system within a building. It has specific guidelines on things such as spacing and placement of these devices and such, so that everyone is using the standards that are highlighted. Furthermore, it talks a little bit about the wiring of the system to make sure that the system is installed and is reliable in its operation. We also, of course, address the local building codes. Every jurisdiction will probably have some additional asks of their city, if you will. And so the NFPA 72 takes that into consideration as well to make sure that not only are we looking at this from a national perspective, but we're also looking at it from a local perspective of what the fire marshal or the authorities having jurisdiction call out for, in addition to what's in NFPA 72. The code book, of course, talks about testing and maintenance of the system, which is very, very crucial. It calls out for semi-annual and annual inspections and testing of the various components of the fire alarm system, and the need for proper documentation of the maintenance that does occur within that fire alarm system space. It ensures that any issues are addressed promptly. So when an inspection occurs, if the systems, unfortunately, or the devices fail, we are obligated to provide a quote to have the deficiencies that have been highlighted repaired. So all of this, of course, requires documentation in the event that the fire marshal comes in and knocks on the door for an audit. So NFPA 72 addresses the specifics on what, how these devices need to be tested, how they need to be maintained, and what type of documentation is required. Furthermore, we also add the mass notification systems, voice alarm systems. So we call this the emergency communication system that also accompany a fire alarm system. So all of those are highlighted in NFPA 72 as well. It is very important, of course, for all of the occupants within a specific building, be it a homeowners association, multi-dwelling, and or a commercial building of some sort, to be trained on how to manage the the fire alarm system in its entirety, meaning what happens when an alarm is set off, etc. So for that, there's specific training requirements that are highlighted in NFPA 72 for all personnel to understand how to operate the fire alarm system, how to silence it, and so forth along the way. And of course, the system, as mentioned earlier, does integrate with other systems. For example, if your space has sprinkler systems, we also, the code book talks about how the fire alarm system will integrate with a sprinkler system and how all of that then serve the purpose of making sure that the fire life safety system is working appropriately in conjunction with each other to support the safety of that premise and the people within it. From time to time, of course, we know technology gets upgraded, new technologies are introduced by the manufacturers of the systems, and practices change over time. Local jurisdictions as well as nationally, there's new lessons learned from incidents that occur. So NFPA has every 3 to 5 years might want to change some of the things that are within the code. And so we do go through some revisions and updates, and all of those will be highlighted and noted. And of course, it is our responsibility as a fire life safety provider to be on top of such changes as the local jurisdictions need to as well. So very important to know that there are some changes that do occur within every year or every 3 to 5 years and with the code and the requirements. So we need to be aware of those and make sure we adhere to them. And lastly, here, as far as compliance and enforcement, it is, of course, the responsibility of the building owners and managers to ensure that the system is meeting the needs and the standards with which it was designed and installed. And lastly here, avoiding penalties if the system is not maintained or operates based on the actual design and code requirements. So the enforcement also comes in the form of your insurance companies, making sure that that the systems are adequately maintained, and if God forbid they are not, and a fire does occur, the insurance companies might also come in with some penalties and or may actually not pay out on the policy if the systems are not maintained. So there are other enforcements within in this industry that also keep everyone sort of in line to make sure that we are all operating as code requires to keep everyone compliant. So I would like to turn it over to Leanne to walk us through the fire alarm system and some of the components. And again, as a reminder, should you have any questions, please feel free to write that up in the chat, and we'll keep a tab on that and address that as the presentation continues. Leanne.
Thank you, Bram. I'm just going to go over how the fire alarm system operates. And our 4 basic parts of a fire alarm control unit is our inputs, our outputs, the CPU, which is our main logic board, the brain, and the backup power supply. Input devices, smoke detectors with thermal detection technology meet the latest NFPA 72 code requirements. Once they detect smoke, they send a signal back to the fire alarm control panel, setting off the output, such as a horn strobe, and then sending a signal to the central monitoring station for fire department response. Water flow switches detect when water is released in a fire sprinkler system. If the sprinkler detects heat, the sprinkler head opens up, flowing water to the sprinkler head. This in turn will tell the monitor module input device to send a signal to the fire alarm control panel communicator, sending a signal to the central station for fire department response. This too will cause the horn strobes to go off. A pull station is a manually operated device that triggers a fire alarm to alert people in a building. It also sends a signal to the fire alarm control panel and then communicating to the central station for fire department response. Output devices. An output device is a piece of hardware that converts data from the fire alarm control panel into a form that humans can perceive. Output devices receive a signal from the fire alarm control panel, changing a status, such as causing a horn strobe to go off. There are other devices that are not so obvious, such as lock releases to open or shut doors, and elevator recall to shut down the elevator system and return it to the main floor. HVAC systems can receive a signal from the fire alarm control panel to shut down the HVAC system. This prevents the spread of smoke and fire throughout a building by stopping the airflow. The CPU is the main control panel unit. This is the brain of the system. It's receiving inputs and sending out outputs, plus communicating to the central station through a communicator, such as a phone line, cellular communicator, or radio network system. It also holds the backup battery system. The backup power supply. One of the most significant benefits of battery backup systems is the ability to provide an uninterrupted power supply. During an outage, the system immediately switches to the backup battery system, powering the fire alarm control system, ensuring that the fire alarm system is still operational without electrical power. How does this all work together? Well, these systems are designed with intricate engineering. Fire alarm systems work by detecting an input, such as a fire or other threat, sending an output signal, activating the horn strobes to go off, elevators to be recalled, and the HVAC system to shut down. The fire alarm control panel then sends a signal via a phone line, cellular tower, or radio network to a central station. The central station then dispatches the local fire department with the signal they received. After the fire department is reached, the central station operator will contact the responsible party. What to do in a false alarm? You always want to check for a fire first. Always check for a fire before doing anything else. If you suspect a fire, evacuate immediately and call the fire department. Once you have confirmed it is a false alarm, silence the fire alarm. Press silence on the annunciator or at the fire alarm control panel. Then call your central station and let them know you had a false alarm. The central station will let the fire department know it was a false alarm. Once this is completed, you can reset the fire alarm system to a normal state. And how to reset your fire alarm control panel. Each control panel is a little different. However, they generally work the same to reset them. After contacting your central station to let them know about the false alarm, you can go to the annunciator or the main fire alarm control panel to reset them. First, silence the fire alarm control panel by pressing silence. Then you want to press reset. This will cause the fire alarm control panel to send voltage to check each input device is having continuity. If it does, the panel will reset. If it does not, the panel will show a trouble. If you see a trouble, you want to write down what that trouble is on the display and then call PSI Technical for service. And there's just some proactive strategies you can do. It is very important to be proactive with your fire alarm system. Make sure you keep your scheduled inspections on time. Always keep a copy of your inspections for the local fire authority. They will do spot visits, and this way you can show you are keeping your building protected with semi-annual or annual inspections. Each year, make sure your maintenance agreements are up to date. You don't want to miss this because then you will miss your inspections, which can cause downtime and fire watch. Make sure to educate your staff and residents what to do when the fire alarm goes off. Have frequent fire alarm drills with an evacuation plan. Train employees and staff what to do in case of an emergency. Keep in mind, PSI is here for you, and we can come by to help you with fire drills and training. System upgrades, please keep in mind these systems do not last forever. Do not wait too long before dealing with deficiencies. The last thing you want to be is on fire watch. Fire watch can cause businesses to close down or thousands of dollars to pay a security guard just to walk around looking for a fire. Sometimes waiting can be the difference in thousands of dollars. I had a client wait 9 months before upgrading their fire alarm system, and the code changed in between the upgrade, which caused the client to have 93 additional devices because of the way their desks were set up. The new code stated if they had 2 or more desks in an office, they must add a horn strobe. So this system went from 54,000 to 147,000. They either had to do the upgrade or shut down their business. And just to keep in mind, fire code changes about every 3 to 5 years. Make sure to keep up with current technologies. Communicate with your tenants or residents about these changes. One of the biggest changes can be cellular communicators. They are like your cell phones. Most of us upgrade our phones about every other year, every 2 years. The same applies with your fire alarm communicator. You may have a 2G communicator and need to be upgraded to 5G or LTE. Lastly, always communicate with your local authority or fire department. Let them know the best access onto the property for an emergency. They are there to help you with any changes in the fire industry. Documentation and record keeping is really important, and we're trying to keep document cabinets by the fire alarm panels. So once again, always keep records of your maintenance logs and keep your inspections on time. Get your community involved in neighborhood safety committees. Always plan for special needs. Is there ADA assistance needed in an emergency? Make sure you have an ADA plan designed when conducting your fire drills. Lastly, always make sure your insurance company knows you are keeping your property and human lives safe with your fire alarm drills, fire alarm inspections, and keeping your fire alarm system current. Some insurance companies may not renew you if the system is not kept up to date.
Thank you, Leanne. Appreciate that. Again, some key things to highlight there is that the life expectancy of the systems have to be certainly considered. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second, but very important to make sure you have a strategy in place on how you're managing the systems, and making sure that everything is working appropriately. Therefore, the importance of testing and maintenance. There are some significant risks if unfortunately the systems are not maintained or managed properly. The increase in fire hazards, naturally, that's a huge risk. If the systems are not properly operating and a fire does occur, of course, this is going to be quite a major issue. Legal liabilities, which we've highlighted both Leanne and I, that the insurance companies could come back and cause some concern. So, but also just legal issues. God forbid, property burns down completely. Hopefully, no fatalities. But if people can't, escape from the buildings, a lot of legal issues kind of come in. So, again, highlighting the importance of assuring that you're managing your fire life safety properly and that you have a plan and a strategy on how you're doing that. Health and safety risks come into picture as well, and that's a huge risk if the systems are not maintained properly. Reputation of the business or your facility also gets damaged when systems are not appropriately maintained. And as we know, many of these fires that we hear about in the news fairly quickly, highlight whose building it was and who may have been responsible for not maintaining it. So again, reputations could unfortunately be damaged. And then, of course, downtime. Many businesses can't afford to not be operating and being productive. So all of these risks, of course, are real risks if you are not managing your systems appropriately. And therefore, having a partner such as ourselves or any other of our competitors that you're working with, perhaps, someone that is licensed to make sure they work on such situations on fire alarm systems, etc. Very important and very key. I'm going to take a look to see if there's any questions at this time. Leanne, would you mind doing that? But
Sure.
in the meantime, while we go through that, there are some questions that come up. So I'm going to take a look at that in just a second. But some of the common questions that we kind of run into, is what is the life expectancy of a fire alarm system? Leanne, would you mind?
Generally, it's around 10 years. Um, it changes constantly, our industry. Electronics constantly is evolving. And so generally 10 years, it can also depend, where are you keeping your control panel? Is it in an outside environment? Is it in a nice, safe, clean environment? Generally, when we have an inside a fire alarm control panel room that is nice and clean, they tend to last much, much longer, but generally about 10 years.
Thank you for that. And so again, highlighting that, as these age, you can't wait all the way to the last sort of minute to then decide that it's time for an upgrade, right? Because there are certain things that we go through when we have an ask of upgrading the fire alarm system or a new system that goes in. So Leanne, what are some of the local requirements when you're updating or upgrading or installing a new fire alarm system? Because it's important to keep the time frame in mind when you make a decision and when it actually gets done. So
Yes, generally they will go into an engineering where we do put them on a plan, and they are submitted to our local jurisdiction. And generally that can take up to a couple weeks to get those plans designed. But our local jurisdictions are generally about 6 to 8 weeks to get permits before we can even start the installation.
thank you. Yes, very important because again, we are at the mercy of the local jurisdiction when it comes to obtaining permits. Of course, everything gets checked, right? Ensuring that we're code compliant with our design, verifying the systems that we're recommending. Of course, it has to be done by a licensed installer. So it's not that anyone can install the system, right? So you really need a licensed company and professional to install the system. But there's also design approval process and time. Also inspections that may occur and may be asked for by the jurisdiction, and an initial inspection. And then final approvals and getting the fire marshal or an AHJ to show up for the final once everything is completed. And so all of this, of course, does take a little time. So it's very important that when you are at that point, and I'm sure that your partner, fire life safety partner, is going to inform you that it may be time to plan accordingly for an upgrade. It would be very advisable to really sit down and spend some time with that. Some other common questions that kind of come up, like what are some of the common devices that can go bad over time and need to be replaced?
Well, pole stations can go bad at schools because a lot of them are on the exterior. They can be damaged or vandalized. So we tend to change those out quite a bit. Dirty smoke detectors. As I was kind of saying earlier about the smoke detectors, it's an intake, and so they can get quite dirty. It's kind of like a magnet in there, so it attracts dust and particles. So to keep those clean through your inspections. And what I see a lot is monitor models on exterior water flows. We see those vandalized quite a bit. So those few things seem to get repaired quite often.
Thank you. Some deficiencies that usually we find when we're doing our testing and inspections. Again, insufficient testing and maintenance, right? If there's a lack of that upkeep, certainly leads to a lot of what Leanne had mentioned regarding these devices. And so those devices then are deficient because they will not pass when we do our regular semi-annual and annual inspections. And then inadequate coverage. There'll be missing detectors or alarms in key areas, which again violate NFPA code. So those are some common deficiencies that we would probably identify and highlight. Improper installation. We may, enter into a space that we have not inspected before, and we will identify, unfortunately, some areas of improper installation of the devices, which need to be corrected. For example, smoke detector near an air vent, which again, that's an obstruction. So that's not, there's some flaws in design and installation of that smoke detector in that location. Lack of integration, failure to integrate with other systems like your HVAC, elevator, and whatnot. So those are some common deficiencies that we can also identify and correct. Faulty and aging components, very, very frequent because of worn out manufacture or malfunctioning devices that have been manufactured a while ago and are obsolete, and old smoke detectors that have expired batteries and things of that nature. So we come across these quite often as well. Non-code compliance is the systems that actually do not meet local or national codes. And of course, improper control panel configurations, again, incorrectly programmed. Just these are some of the common deficiencies that we come across, and it's very important, as Leanne mentioned earlier in our presentation, that it's important that we identify these and then make corrections fairly quickly to not compromise the functionality of the system. Any other questions? If not, we certainly appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time, and hopefully we were able to communicate a little bit about the basics of the fire alarm system. Performance system integration is dedicated in bringing these types of presentations and education, if you will, to our clients, prospects, and our industry folks to make sure that we're keeping everyone sort of on top of what is expected. And to continue that, we hope to see all of you in our next session, which is hosted on December the 12th. Which will be on the testing and maintenance of our fire life safety systems. And also, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, a copy of this particular presentation will be sent to all of our attendees. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to address any specific questions that you might have. The ask here from us is many of our clients are asking us to stop by their facilities and their businesses and perform an assessment, which we will kindly do. We will do a sidewalk and assess your current fire alarm system, your fire life safety strategies, and connect with you to see if there are areas of opportunity that we can hopefully help support in correcting. So please take us up on that. Leanne and I will be more than happy to visit with each of you and go through that assessment. And again, the assessment will highlight some good areas of opportunity, whether the system is functioning properly, which we hope it is. And if it isn't, we will give you some recommendations on how to bring your system up to date and up to speed. With that, we thank you for attending this presentation today, and look forward to seeing you all on the next session. Thank you and have a fantastic day. Thank you, Lauren.